You're still wide awake and still here after a really incredible week. You must be exhausted, but thanks for being here for this final closing plenary. As you know, GS1 had as part of its 2014 strategy to set up an innovation function. And it was over the last several months that we've defined that, and I'm happy to announce that this week at the Global Forum, we formally launched the Innovation Network. It was good news. Anybody who was at the workshop yesterday, raise your hand. So you are our innovation pioneers at GS1, and also, I hope, our innovation champions. We're going to be going out into your communities and engaging exactly the people we need to move GS1 into the coming decades. And I'll tell you more about how others of you can join our innovation network at the end of the short presentation. Next slide. So we've been an incredibly successful organization for 40 years. Why do we need innovation? I'm going to tell you two stories. One story, e-commerce, digital, omni-channel, something we're talking about over the last year or two. But you know, when you think about it, believe it or not, it was 20 years ago this year that Amazon and eBay first launched their online e-commerce retail platforms. I mean, right in the vicinity of our core business. And even within the early 2000s, many of our core companies, Tesco, Walmart, and many others, were launching their e-commerce offerings and getting involved in that. But only in 2014 did we really embrace e-commerce as really an important part of our future. And I have to ask ourselves, if we had had an innovation function 20 years ago, 15 years ago, might we be in a better position now to serve the needs of our entire industry, including e-commerce, omni-channel, and traditional brick and mortar, than we are today? Perhaps we would be. Now, another story that's quite different from that is the electronic product code, or EPC, embedded in RFID. We were fortunate enough to have a capability at the Auto ID Center, then the Auto ID Lab, and then eventually EPC Global, to do early prototyping, and an independent, safe place for industry and GS1 to gather to explore a really new concept, which at the time was essentially replacing could you have an electronic tag that replaces barcodes in the long run? So the growth of RFID tags, of course, has really only started really taking off the last 5 years. You can see the growth pattern there, where they're projecting over nearly 5 billion UHF RFID tags sold last year. So that's a good news story, that when we have an independent place to talk and gather minds together of like and dissimilar thoughts, come up with an innovation, develop it, and then actually pre-standards work to give a standards body then already draft specifications that could be turned into standards, prototypes, and very importantly, a community that's already engaged on the problem. So two contrasting stories there. So we set up the GS1 Innovation Network to be a place where we can have an intersection of our diverse ideas from around the world, experts, out-of-the-box thinkers, and pragmatists to gather, to develop business and technology foresight, so we're looking forward, and not just thoughts, but actionable products, things that can be used to jumpstart the standards processes in the future, and allow GS1 to make more strategic, more proactive planning and investment in the future. So that's kind of the overarching goal. Now, one other thing that's interesting, and some people talk to me and say, well, why do you need an innovation network? Because you're not inventing anything. Well, it turns out in the Oxford English Dictionary, at least, there's a subtle difference between invention and innovation. I mean, invention is creating something completely new. And innovation, I think it fits our organization actually quite well. It's to make changes in something established, especially by introducing new methods, new ideas, and new products. And that's exactly what we aim to do in GS1. So, what are we going to innovate in GS1? And I think the first thing is our culture. You're going to hear from our next inspirational speaker, his thoughts on this, but a successful culture of innovation requires diverse thinking, diversity, creativity, and a place for these things to come together on a regular basis. And these are some pictures from last year's Global Forum, where we see that we have lots of creativity, lots of energy, an incredible, rich diversity, probably unlike any other standards body in the whole world. And when we come together, we can create beautiful things like this mural. But we can't just do that once a year. We need a place where we can gather people together on a regular basis and explore their views of the world that come from their parts of the world, and work together ultimately to develop something that's good for people, industry, and around the world. Another thing we need to do is innovate other things. We need to be able to recognize potentially good ideas and be excessive sharers of those ideas. Imagine if we can get MOs who have wonderful creative ideas to introduce those to the global environment earlier in the process. We could align people behind them more easily, and also then position ourselves to develop standards better. Getting the MOs together and thinking and sharing early is really important. And if you remember, one of the subtexts of the innovation part of our strategy is MO to MO sharing, and we believe this is going to be a good place to do that. We need to look at our traditional business processes and supply chains and see what new technologies might be able to better enable efficiencies and cost savings there. There'll be other new things we're looking at, social, mobile, digital, and other things as well that we hope to be seeing how we can leverage those kinds of technologies to provide better value for the world. We also need to look very, very critically at ourselves. Where are our standards weak? Where are they strong? What are the alternatives out there? Alternative identification schemes, alternative carriers. And look at those as whether they're opportunities for us that we can embrace or threats, and do that much more early in the process. And finally, unlike a company that generally is innovating to give themselves a competitive advantage for that company, we need to look for opportunities that provide opportunities for a wide range of industry. Global standards ultimately are services or solutions that will be the tide that raises all ships and provide global interoperability and improvements for people around the world. And that's kind of the sweet spot for what we need to look at. So how's this going to work? And in fact, I really want to thank GS1 Germany, GS1 Netherlands. I'd like to thank Frans Johansson, our inspirational speaker, and many others for helping us to develop kind of a framework for how this is done. We start off with an innovation board. It had, as Miguel said, its first face-to-face meeting today, and it was really an incredible, inspirational meeting for me. A lot of free discussion. Decided that we weren't going to wear ties anymore. That was a really radical departure from our normal board meetings. But other than that, too, we really started to map out what this methodology might look like that will help us to maximize our probability of hitting big ideas. In the Innovation Network, we have something called the In Zone, which some of you experienced yesterday. It's kind of an area for brainstorming. It's for discussing, sharing ideas from inside your organization and outside. This is where MOs and MOs can share with each other in a global office. We need to engage better the auto ID labs. Great resource of some of the most prestigious universities in the world, and ultimately a broader range of universities, perhaps asking each of the MOs here to make a relationship with at least one university that we can bring into the network. Industry, of course, starting with our own favorite industry players, but we need to expand the range of people we're talking with, because the things we may be working on 10 years from now may not, the industry players in that area now may not be with GS1 at this point. And we need to make sure we get external people as well. We need external ideas. And alone, if we have these things isolated, they're going to have certain ideas, but if we can connect these things, if we can create an intersection of thought between the various players in the world, we can be fairly sure we're going to come up with lots of ideas. Lots and lots of ideas. And that's the idea. It's to get a real large quantity of pretty good ideas or promising ideas. And ultimately, and this is the tough part, investing in a subset of those ideas in what we're calling incubators. And the goal is to not just start one incubator, but try to ultimately have a number of them. And in fact, some of them will not be successful. And that's okay. I think if everything we looked at was successful, we're probably not reaching far enough. We're probably not taking a big enough risk. And we have a number of tools that we're going to use to actually vet and develop concepts within those incubators, including having workshops, of course, but also building prototypes, drafting preliminary standards that might be useful ultimately to give to GS1 sort of as actionable products to create new standards, new systems, and new solutions. So that's kind of the general flow, and I'm happy to talk to you more about that another time. So already just this week in the In Zone, our brainstorming part of the Innovation Network, we talked about the need for looking at the future of our core technologies, the future business needs for identification and capture or carriers. So I think we need to, this is where we're going to need to look carefully at what we're doing now. How is it meeting the market demands of the world? And again, we're talking 3 or more years out, so we're not trying to, we don't want to do this in a way that interferes with NGPI or anything. We need to look beyond that. What's beyond our current standards process? Another thing that's been discussed is the Internet of Things. And it's quite interesting because the term Internet of Things actually was coined in 1999 by Kevin Ashton and working with Sanjay Sarma at MIT at the Auto ID Center. And we developed basic technologies that are actually important parts of the Internet of Things. But we, as an organization, at least globally, and I'm sure some of you are active more locally, but we're really not engaged in that the way we are. And an interesting idea about Internet of Things, too, might be not thinking about it in the abstract sense, because there are lots of conferences on the Internet of Things. But thinking about it from a perspective, for example, the value of the Internet of Things in the grocery store of the future, or something like this that's somewhere or in hospitals, are 2 examples of things we might want to think about. But again, what this is really going to look like is up to all of you as you participate in the network over the coming months. In the future, who knows? I mean, there's lots of things we could do. I like the idea of 3D printing. It's about products. GS1 cares about products. What kind of an identification system might they need to link printers to what kinds of things printers can make, to the filaments or ingredients that are required to make those things, to the software that are required to provide the machine with designs. Where can I find the machine that's capable of printing the part that I need for my dishwasher? So I can see a whole world of identification and capture and sharing that might be helpful to propelling that market to the future, including even producing ribs for your body in the future. And this is actually being done now in many ways. Customization is another interesting area. We talk about unique product identification, but how do we have unique product identification in a world where every product is completely customized? You're choosing the color and the logo to put on it, and in addition to the normal things like size and style. Telemedicine, we're already engaged in healthcare. What new requirement, we talked about for retail, what new requirements did the e-commerce world give us? We weren't ready to meet those. Can we think ahead about telemedicine and the equivalent of e-commerce in the medical world, especially now as our strategy is calling for us to working more with the healthcare providers? And finally, you know, in the emerging economies, I think is another really important part to look. That's the biggest growth sector probably in the world. And what kinds of, are there special new requirements or special requirements that we need for supporting industry and people in these worlds? And what kinds of innovations are they going to give to us as we start working more closely? Again, we are in such great position to do that because we have 111 MOs around the world, including in all these kinds of economies. And finally, with transportation logistics, we all saw many of you saw John Phillips's talk. Just whether this is serious or not, but Alibaba is now launching drone delivery of their products. Amazon did that. That's certainly a transportation and logistics interesting problem for us. So just a few ideas. I know you will all come up with many more, and better yet, actioning those to the future. So just to wrap up, anyone who wants to become a part of the network, you can send email to ocp@gs1.org. And we're going to open it up to the whole GSO member organization community, to all of the GSMP community, including industry, all the labs. And I think after a couple months, we'll see how we engage increasingly broader ranges of people there. So go forth, engage, and innovate. Thank you.
Our inspirational speaker for today. An entrepreneur
consultant, Franz Johansson has spoken to audiences around the world, from the largest corporation boardrooms to villages in emerging economies. His debut book, The Medici Effect, which I think many of you have a copy of, because we handed out copies of your book at the workshop and at our booth on Tuesday. The Medici Effect shattered assumptions about how great things happen and was named one of the best books by Business Week on the topic of innovation. And the concepts in that book really helped to shape at least my thinking and my team's thinking about how to set up an effective network. His follow-up book, The Click Moment, also received stunning reviews and talks about how you can strategize, plan, and analyze your way to success, but it doesn't always work. It was named one of the top 10 books by Fast Company in 2012. He's founded a software startup, a healthcare firm, a hedge fund, and now is a strategic consultant around the world to customers everywhere, and a frequent traveler and speaker like many of us. So now it's my pleasure to welcome to the podium our inspirational speaker for 2015, Frans Johansson.